boy. Oh boy, what have I done? Okay, so here we go. Battalion Combat series. I've watched just about every video I can on the interwebs with the tubes, and from just about every channel that has it. Chewy Matt, Wise Guy History, Military Board Gamer, Tabletop Edge. I've watched them all. But the only way I'm going to learn this is if I share my struggles with all of my faithful subscribers. So I'm going to go over my first impressions. Now, I've just watched other people's tutorials, and this really is not meant to be a tutorial, so just a heads up, not a tutorial. This is me trying to grasp this game. So I've watched a lot of other people's videos. I have actually a private playlist with like 40 some videos on it that I just run through and actually go to sleep to, and I'm hoping through osmosis that at some point I'll wake up and go, oh yeah, I got this. But I thought I would go over what makes this. When I first looked at this game, I have Baptism by Fire, Brazen Chariots, and Panzer's Last Stand is what I really want, and that's in the mail. And I've pre-ordered the new one they put out for the Western Front. Just came out like 2 days ago or yesterday. So, yeah, I mean, the version of the rulebook that I have is version 1.2, and I can already tell that the Panzer's Last Stand rulebook is head and shoulders above what they put out for 1.2, but they have done a bang-up job. Their rulebooks, the Gamers rulebooks, Multi-Man Publishing that they're doing for this series, they put GMT games to shame. I'm sorry to say it, but these rulebooks they're great. So I have 1.2, and I don't know if I'm assuming that 2.0 is compatible with the other games. But I just want to start with what I have here, and there are some differences between the way this one's laid out and the 2.0, and I can tell already that the 2.0 is a lot better laid out, and this one isn't bad, but I can tell that the 2.0 book will be probably what I reference and go to. So this game, I'm sure everyone's probably watched other videos before from everyone else. The first thing that struck me as odd was that there's no like combat odds chart table. And I was like, what? That's not normal. What's he doing? I can't. How do I function? Error. So there's not much to it. There's just not much to it. So that kind of threw me off because, hey, I'm a guy, I'm used to like the East Front Barbarossa series with charts and tables and airplanes and all sorts of crazy stuff. So that threw me off, and I was like, well, that's just weird. Why would I want to play that? Then the more I watched the videos of people playing, I kind of started to notice that it reminded me of something. It was driving me nuts. And what it reminded me of, while you look at the unit symbols here, was an old computer game that I used to play. I'll put some footage up on the screen, and this game kind of reminds me of that. You get the computer war game, and there's no hexes on it, and you're like, what the hell? How am I supposed to play this? It reminds me of 2008's Conquest of the Aegean by Panther Games, which was a monumental shift in computer wargaming when it came out, and this kind of reminds me of that because you're dealing with formations and orders and fronts and how things react via communication, and you're worried about logistics, and that is kind of the way that game played. Now it's discontinued. I don't think you can get it anymore, at least from the Matrix Games site. And Panther Games had a whole bunch of them. I think there was one about the Rhine, and there was like an airborne assault, but their whole thing was all about how you communicate to your units from the top down, giving them orders, watching them react. There was a delay in what they do, and things moved in formations, and there were no hexes, and it used like scanned maps, as you can see the footage here on the screen. And this game reminds me of that, and that's kind of how BCS seems like it wants to tip wargaming on its head and kind of surprise everyone. And I think that's why I was hesitant to get into it, but the more I watch it, the more I think maybe I'll like it. But it seems more than a lot of, medium complexity to me, if you ask me. But, I mean, we'll give it a shot here. So the counters, really weird. I had to get used to this at first. From what I can tell, there are such things like HQs, and there's units that are, have an armor value, but those are broken down by the type of armor value so that you kind of know what you're using. And there's, there's no attack defense type of thing. It's kind of like an action rating. And there's assault arrows telling you what you can do. And I will say the counter sheet is very well organized. After my book has messed it up, you can ignore that. But for example, here, these are all lined up on the counter sheet, color-coded, so you know exactly what to print. And that way you're not, you're not guessing on what goes with what. This is your combat train here. And this is kind of like a supply logistics hub that's on the map. And what you're looking at here is, you're looking at the 5th Light Division. I hope I'm saying that right. And this is the HQ, right? So obviously here, you have the division HQ with a command radius, all right? And each of these counters has got little specific, I don't know what I did with my pointer. And there's specific things that can tip you off on there that you want to take a look at. For example, the yellow background on this unit, let me zoom in a little bit, that donates that it's a hard unit. And of course, you've got your typical NATO symbol in there for armor or panzer. Division at the top and the name. So this is, I grabbed all these to kind of keep them together to show you what these look like as a group here. There's some I don't, I'll be honest, I don't know what the support means down here. We'll get into all that later, I guess, when I dive in. But this is your HQ. Now this little one right here, right, with the little explosion thingy, as I like to call it, those are your artillery points, RD points as they like to call them. And then the name's right down here, the 5th Leich. I believe it's spelled L-E-I-C-H. I forgot the spelling already. And one place you might want to go, the spelling is L-E-I-C-H-T-E, light. One place you might want to go, though, right off the bat, is hit up that, the Battalion Combat Series internet reference site. I'll put the link in the description. Get the abbreviation. There's an abbreviation thing that you can download just specifically for Brazen Chariots. And it's going to help you with, who's what, and you can look up unit history, which we'll be going over. And I found that to be helpful because, you're not going to, it's Pioneer, machine gun, but it just helps to know what you're dealing with. And the units, you have armor here, hard, but I had trouble, like what is it? It's not a normal military counter, so I can't relate to this. Okay, it's just weird. The 1514, I don't know what this is, right? I have no clue. Obviously, I know what that is. That's an 88. Okay, that one I could pick out easily. But this was, the counters were throwing me. They're not the most beautiful counters, that's for sure. They're old school. But what I found in the book was pretty cool here. I just want to reference something. And before I show you the page in the book, it did take me a while to figure out, I don't understand how to read this little page in the book I'm about to show you. There's a deployed side and a non-deployed side in this game. So if you look at this, the side with the higher movement value, right here. So your movement value is right down here, and it's kind of color coded, so you know what kind it is. So for example, here is a 14 movement value, and it's in red, so it's TAC MA, tactical. And if you look at the very start here, if I can find it, there's a note on, this is the series rules 1.2. I'll put up near the end, I'll show you guys the difference between this rule book and 2.0, but I think they really outdid themselves on that 2.0 rule book. So one of the cool things, I mean, I was saying, like, I can't identify with this, like, what is this? So the deployed side is, you know, any unit with a different MA, right here, okay, on each counter side can be deployed. The lower MA side is the deployed side. The other side is the move side. Okay, so I flipped this over, and I wanted to know what this was. Now, if you go to the back of the book, there's this cool little example in here, and this kind of helped me get my head around, like, what is that unit? I'm just not used to, either I'm used to seeing a silhouette or something. Go back in here, for example, right back in back on page 42, there's a little thing here that's called examples of different types of AV. So with their deployed side AV, range, deployed move and allowance, games they are featured in a brief note. So if you look here on the deployed side of that shit that I just showed you, look here, 2 AV, range of 1, 4 14, Brazen Chariots, and here's your Panzer III models that this would represent. So now, if you go back to this, and of course this is strictly, you know, as an example. You don't need to memorize this or anything. But if you go back here, you can see where this starts to make sense. And you can see where it's 414 for the movement in the lower right. So I believe, if I'm reading this right, that this is a Panzer III unit. And here's your different model types. I think if I'm reading that right, you know, the 2 AV when it's deployed. So this little page here kind of helped me get a, you know, like what is this supposed to represent? So now I know. So that kind of helped. And again, that's in the back. This is 1.2 rulebook, page 42. And there's some other ones in here. And what's great about this is it'll, in parentheses here, it gives the abbreviations for the game that this unit is featured in. You know, here's a Panzer V, the Panther. Last Blitzkrieg and Panzer's Last Stand. But look at that, right? So you can see the, you know, how the year, you can see the difference in the vehicles we're using here. That's crazy. But yeah, so this helped a lot, right? That's the first thing I found in the back, and I didn't even read the rules yet. I was just kind of thumbing through here, seeing what I could find. Let me put that down there. But what threw me off was it was talking about 2 AV units, and then I realized that, you know, there's the, this is the movement side, but when you deploy it, you know, they get a little bit better on that side there. So that helped me out a lot to kind of get to my grasp on what the heck that was representing. You know, and something like an 88 kind of was a little bit common sense to me. And if we look at some other things on the counter, they definitely look odd. You know, there's some crazy numbers on here. This is the number of steps available, so 4. And in this game, you know, other videos have mentioned this, steps are not really like a kill factor. It's more a unit's descent into chaos and kind of falling apart before it needs to be refit. So there are some step loss counters that you'll want to use. When they do suffer step losses, you'll be using these counters here, which is reminiscent of a few other games I've played. So for, you know, you can do something like this. At the top is the steps remaining, so you'll be kind of using those like that. So he's got 4 total. And then you want to look over here, and you have a action rating right there. And the higher that number, the better. A 5 is a pretty good unit. I can tell you that. That I know from watching other people's videos. When it's in this mode here, same thing. And of course the AV rating is down on the movement side, armor value. And some of these counters I do believe are going to have a range on them. I don't know if I could just get my tweezers working here. Let me see if I can find one Nope, not having much luck there. Something with a range on it. I might have to look, zoom in somewhere and try to find one. If it does not have a range on it, it's 1 hex if it's not printed on the counter. I didn't come prepared for class today because I didn't find another counter that has a range on it. Yep, that's my fault. Yeah, the normal units, I don't see that. But take, for example, this 88. Range 2. Rating 4. Of course, it's a 4 because it's a nasty gun. Only 1 step. So it looks like on the flip side here, that's the movement, and you'll notice that it loses its attack values over here and this down here in this corner. So when you put it on this side, you know, you're ready to go. Now the AV4 in black means that this is standoff armor value. Black means standoff. And there's separate rules for what that means. I'm not going to get into it right now. I just wanted to show you the action rating and the range here too. And you might be wondering what the yellow circle means. Yellow circle just means that you cannot rebuild the unit. Other people have covered that in their videos. I don't want to, you know, double cover everything. So the first thing I did when I was going to try to learn this was go over these counters, which looked extremely weird to me, and try to associate what, like, you know, what does this represent? You know, is it Panzer III? What is it? This is an HQ. The Ghost Train supply, and then the name of the, you know, the named shit, which I think this can be used for counter pull, or you can put it on a display board that you can print off, which I do need to print those off. The arrows were odd to me, very strange. That's an assault arrow, and that's going to tell you what that can do in certain types of combat, and there's actually a chart for that. If you have an assault arrow, it's going to let you see, do I have that out right here? For example, it's referenced right here. You can do a regular attack, C7.2, a shock attack, an assist. So this will kind of tell you, depending on the fire event, you know, can you do that? And that's the assault arrow. Red AV, limited standoff. So those will start to all come together here for you. And again, I have not read the rules. I have just watched other people play, but just going through this stuff, I'm just kind of relaying what I discovered and some cool things about the rule book. The other thing that caught my attention was, oh, by the way, the standoff AV, any AV unit with a black AV showing, these units are more defensive, but have a unique ability to fire offensively. So yeah, that would describe an 88. So there you go. You can kind of put these in the categories. That's definitely an 88. Another thing I caught my eye on the back of the book was there's like a wheel for the activation phase. You're used to seeing flowcharts, but check that out. That caught my attention, right? That's different. Kind of follow the wheel, and I had never seen that before. And then there's even some breakoffs here where it talks about fatigue and isolation. But this was new to me. That was weird, right? And that caught my eye. So, you know, this game is definitely introducing some concepts. And of course, at the back, and the BCS, you know, the special BCS webpage actually mentions, hey, go through the designer notes, because they're really actually very good designer notes. And there's a lot of them. He talks about how he was going to model supply, and he said that it just wasn't working. You know, hey, what happened? You got to count strength and defense points and combat trains, and there's a whole bunch of stuff back here that you'll want to take a look at and read on the back of the main book. Now, the Panzer's Last Stand comes with army books or playbooks or something like that, so you'll want to check those out and read through those. But I think that the version 2 rule book is definitely laid out really super nice. And we're on map A here, just south of Tobruk. And take note, you know, there's a deployed side and a movement side, so pay attention to both sides of those, and this will be your steps left. Now, the other thing that I don't know what the hell these are for are red, support, and standoff. Like, I don't know what these are for. I don't get them. I've watched some videos and I still don't get the whole support thing. I think it needs to be explained like step by step, like the title of the video says, for dummies. What else? What else came with the game? They have some crib notes, which is cool. They did this with some other stuff, especially Grand Tactical Series. Here's some crib notes that, you know, while not designed to teach you the game, they're just kind of like quick little hits that you can take a look at for reference. Let's see if I can find something in here. Here you go. For example, your movement types come in right here. Remember we said red was TAC MA, ignore plane enemy ZOC, stop on entering an AV enemy ZOC. So you might blow right by someone with an arrow, but when you have an AV unit, so for example, you would, you know, the TAC movement will go right through the assault arrow. Does not have to stop there, but if you go into another AV unit, you will have to stop upon entering the EZOC. What else? Besides the abbreviation thing that you want to download, take a look at the leg and truck movement allowance. There's a stop in any enemy ZOC, and you cannot move from one enemy ZOC to another. Another thing I noticed is that this game seems to take place on roads a lot. A lot of the videos I'm watching, I'm wondering like, why, you know, everything's on a road, in a hub, in a junction. And I'm just like, why don't they just cut through the forest? So I had to like get my mind out of that mindset of, it's not that type of game. This is, you know, it's about logistics and objectives and how you work toward the objective. A lot like OCS is about like supply and demand and plotting how you're going to you know, provide for the attacks that you're planning out. So definitely there's a lot to take in. And now there's a thing called a blob, and this is where it harkens me back to the video game that I showed you earlier. A blob is basically let me move all this out of here and ignore that. A blob is like, if you picture on a map here, this blob, pretend there's like a green glowing circle around this. Okay, and it's defined as the area on the map containing the units of a given formation, ignoring combat trains and any out of command radius units. So, you know, this would be like a blob here. When you see the fifth light together, just picture like a glowing circle. Wow, you know, just, that's a blob. That's like a mass. And that's a lot like that video game did. You would have, you know, there's no hexes in it. You'd have like a mass of units moving together. And if one dropped off, say you told it to defend a front, which you could do in that video game, you could actually pick the direction that you're going to defend in. It would stay behind and these would keep moving. It would slowly get out of command. It reminds me of that video game a lot. Check it out. Check out the videos. So this would be like a blob. So that's another thing. There's a thing called buddies. And I think the allies use the buddies in this. You can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but the buddies are like different formations that are completely used to working together. And I think they threw that's like a last Blitzkrieg thing. Because I think normally it's not good if formations are mixed up. But what do I know? There's a ghost side to these supply trains here, and these are combat trains. They get disrupted due to movement or displacement caused by the enemy. There's a ghost side right there. Okay, and I don't know anything about the supply or how that's done yet. I'm just pointing that out. So these are some of the things that caught my eye. A lack of the combat odds ratio table. These multiple types of combat tables here, such as an engagement table, combat table modifiers, combat table. Look how small that is. And it's really strange. It's going to take you a while to get used to what kind of game this is, and the fact that, you know, you don't always get to do what you want because you're going to have to roll on this snafu table every time you try to activate something. And you're going to get different results that are going to give you the ability to do certain things. You know, if you pass, you can do all this stuff. Partial is do this. Fail, that's not going to be good. So the game lends itself to a lot of replayability because every time you play it, you're not always going to be able to activate everything you want. And there's also some optional rules for chit draw and stuff like that. So again, if you want, check out the 2.0 rulebook on that BCS site and maybe compare the two. I could put up a quick screen grab of just exactly how differently the layout is. For example, in rulebook 2, they start right off with my light's about to fall. They start right off with the step counters and everything in the book, and it's completely laid out a little bit different. So I'm just curious from anyone that's out there watching this, like, can I just jump to the 2.0 rulebook and still play Brazen Chariots? Much like, SCS, you always use the latest rulebook, or OCS, you always grab the latest rulebook. So anyway, all right, so that should kind of help you understand what the units are and what you're dealing with them, and then get that, like I said, get the abbreviation thing so if you're not familiar with a lot of military terms or German units and things like that, you're going to definitely want to check that out so you can get your head around what Panzerjäger or Pioneer, things like that. Objectives. There's going to be times when you want to give formations an objective, and objectives will let you fight. I think it's like within 2 hexes of the marker, so you have to really plan where you put these. And the snafu chart is going to tell you, do I get objectives? Well, here I get 2. If I pass and I do good, I can put down 2, and that helps you figure out where you're going to go. You put it down, and you're like, all right, we're going to work toward this town, Forbes Mound. And anything within 2 hexes of that, I can initiate combat with. So I know if I want to attack this, I got to put an objective there. And there's a thing called a double tap where you put 2 objective markers down to get a bonus. And again, I don't want to go into the, this isn't really a tutorial, but these are the things that I grabbed while watching other people's videos. And it was interesting to watch some people play this where they were like, this is ridiculously stupid. I don't get it. Why am I playing this too? This is the best game I've ever played. A lot of the, when they start off, they're really frustrated with the way the rules are and they can't look things up and something's not in there. But then when you get 4 or 5 videos in, they're starting to love it. And I was on the fence. I had Baptism by Fire. It's still in the shrink, and I was going to dump it. But I'll give it a shot. It's a different war game. It's not what I'm used to. So, all right. I just wanted to go over those counters. I'm trying to think of some other things on the counters that we didn't look at. And I'm going to let you guys, if you own the game, I don't need to go over exactly what every little symbol is, but here's the close-up here of the assault arrow we were talking about. And how do they describe steps in this game? Let me see if I can look that up for you, because it's not like what you would expect. And it's important to know, so you'll place a step loss marker under a unit counter that has lost steps. Use the number facing up on the marker to show the number of steps remaining. When the marker goes to 0, the unit is removed from the map. Any unit without a marker is assumed to be at full strength. There are no other effects of step loss beyond the eventual removal of the unit. So what's the bad of the rulebook? The bad of the rulebook is there's no freaking index. There's no index. That is really irritating. I believe they added an index in Panzer's Last Stand, but not having an index is going to drive me effing nuts. Just so you know that. So that's one downside. You can rebuild steps, and say you replace, say you bring 1 back on this guy, and you would put this over to 5. So you can actually build up your units, and I like that because that reminds me of like John Tiller games. And so you can, to me, that makes sense. Some of the other replacement methods in games I don't like, but when I can visually build up the steps back up to what they were, that hits with me. That makes sense. It's like, oh, I want to put 2 here. Let's strengthen this Panzer unit, and let's put, I like that. So that's cool. And again, that's on page 26 of the 1.2 rule book. And of course, the REPL, the REPLs, you never use those on the first turn of any scenario. And they come in 2 flavors, AV and non-AV. A unit with an AV, armor value on either side, on either counter side, can only use the AV replacements. So I still think that's a cool feature. That caught me as something interesting. And then here's your mixed formations. Like I was talking about, you're not really supposed to, if you look here, there's a good example there of when things get a little bit mixed up. You know, I was talking about those blobs, right? So check this out. Needs to assess the location of the smooth blob of the inactive friendly formations in the vicinity. So there's some terminology there you're gonna have to get used to. You have to check out, you know, what's in the vicinity. So you have your blob here, but oh, who's this guy? This guy's in my blob here. He's we don't work well together. There's some issues there. So I'm gonna have to get used to that too. I'm gonna have to figure out, you know, there's lots of little things to figure out. There's also fatigue. Units can get fatigued, and there's some counters for that right there. I don't know how to use those yet. So those are the things that I'm confronted with. So if anyone has any advice other than reading the design notes, because I already know about that, on how to wrap my head around, you know, these support counters and drop support, let me know, because I'd like to do not a tutorial, but I'd like to do an example video of it to help other people. So just let me know what you think. All right, I have rambled 24 minutes. That's long enough, and I'm tired. But I'm going to start reading this up, and I just wanted to put this up there as, yeah, it's intimidating because it's a different type of war game. All right, thanks for watching. Let me know if you're even interested in more BCS videos. There's tons of them on the internet, and other people have done them way better than I will ever fathom. They actually play live, so Wise Guy is playing live, and I could never do that. Okay, so thanks a lot for watching.